Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum, to the waves of the ocean, to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise. And I'm like trying to get all these phones to connect or disconnect, but let me tell you what a crazy world this is. And so thank you all for tuning into the show today. It's going to be an exciting show. I think we're going to have a guest. We're working on that right now. But Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. Hi, Carmen. Your mic is live. So if you can just bear with me here, it's a little crazy on my end, but we're going to get moving on with the show. Okay. We did have two guests today, but we're down to one. But it's really good because we have a really great guest, and I'm so excited to have her for both hours because we have way too much to talk about. But before I bring Carmen on the air to talk about the pyramids and all kinds of cool Egypt stuff, I want to remind you that my new book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, is getting very close to the release date. We are taking pre-orders. We've gotten wonderful, wonderful endorsements from people like Carmen herself. And you can find information about that at www.manmadethechronicles.com. So anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Carmen and get her on the air. Professor at the University of Calgary, Carmen Boulter, presented accumulated evidence and research which suggests to her that levitation and advanced knowledge were used to construct the numerous pyramids in ancient Egypt. Her past life recall as a child led her to seek physical evidence for her visions of temples, pyramids, and ceremonies. This quest brought her to Egypt 23 times, where she conducted extensive academic research and fieldwork around the Great Pyramid. So from the pyramidcode.com, please welcome to Just Energy Radio, Carmen Boulter. Hi, Carmen. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for just, jumping in here in the 11th hour. I just really appreciate your flexibility.
My pleasure.
You have been a very, very busy girl.
I've taken 26 flights this year and spoken in 6 countries already.
Wow. And one of them was Russia. What's up with that? I mean, it sounds like, at the end of the Cold War and relations with Russia changing, I find it interesting that American academicians like yourself are getting the opportunity to go there and, meet with their people, share information, and stuff like that.
Well, I'm actually Canadian, and
that's right.
I met the scientists in South Africa and in Egypt, actually, that invited me to come and give a paper at a congress. And it's Dr. Konstantin Korotkov, who's done a lot of work with Carillion photography and advanced the diagnostic tools and measurement tools for measuring consciousness fields. And so he came on the expedition that we did to a new site that I led in Egypt. And when he saw the work that I was doing, he invited me to come and speak at his 16th annual Congress. And this one was called Science, Information, and Spirit in St. Petersburg. And there I gave a paper on the results of my Great Pyramid study. called The Effect of the Great Pyramid on the Human Aura and Chakra System. And so while I was there, then I met some, one thing leads to another, but the Pyramid Code, my documentary series, has been translated into Russian, and it's been on air on national television in 30 countries, and Russia's one of them. So they were waiting for me to talk to me about new stuff, and I am absolutely amazed at how advanced they are, and also how little is reported on the good stuff. So CNN mentality leaves us with this idea of old guys in bread lines with empty shells and no bread, but they have advanced considerably over the last few decades, and we have not been informed about what they're doing.
And I think that, just getting that insight into what's going on there, and you're right, I don't think Americans or Canadians, anybody in the Western world, how's that, has any kind of insight into what's going on in countries like that.
No, and I also have been to 53 countries, and I've looked for myself in terms of what's going on there, and I actually have worked and lived in 6 different countries. So I worked in Taiwan, and we don't know what's going on there either, unless you're on the ground looking around for yourself. And so I think it's just fascinating how the whole thing works. And no one can tell me that they're, repressed and not highly advanced and highly educated in Russia. And it's funny because I've mentioned that to a few people since I'm back, and they say, oh, the communists are just hiding around the corner. And, it's media that gives us our ideas about what's going on.
Well, and I'm glad that you're getting to break down some of those walls that are there. But one of the things that I saw on your website was that they had built a giant pyramid in Russia, like for testing?
More than that. There's many new
so we're not talking like a pyramid to do gambling on the inside kind of thing, like at Luxor.
No. And they actually built a series of 30 pyramids near an oil field, and they noticed in order to improve productivity and the quality, and then they've built all kinds of pyramids for various reasons. But what Valery Uvarov has done is he has cracked the whole system for how pyramid energy functions. And the funders for this recent pyramid that was finished, the capstone went on it a week ago Monday. So we're talking like just finished. And it's part of a complex that it will have 9 pyramids in total. It's just completely amazing in terms of what's going on there. And it was a produce company that was interested in energizing food before it got on the trucks for the consumption of humans. So we're not talking GMO, chemtrails, let's hurt the people here. We're talking let's help the people. And so the structure that was going to create the best energy for this food was the pyramid. And so they funded it. It cost $5 million. And they've got an oracle chamber. They've got all kinds of technology. I saw the construction pictures. The casing stones went on while I was in Russia. Yeah, the casing stones, and then the capstone went on just a week ago here. And so there was a little anecdote. I mean, there's many things going on with the testing of the energy, but one of the construction workers had serious asthma. And before the pyramid was even finished, he was working on it, and he was standing in there, and all of a sudden he started to tremble, and his left side started to have this tingling, and then he started to breathe differently, and he had this experience, and he was 100% cured of his asthma and no longer needs his heavy medication. He had a spontaneous healing in the pyramid before it was even finished.
Wow. And we're going to come back to the metaphysical part, because I think that's something that endears me to you, is that you're like this scientist that came out of academia, but you're like a chakra girl at the same time. What's with that?
Well, it's called authenticity, and I really, I've had a lot of experiences in my life, and I also am an academic.
But I just think that that's really cool, personally. I mean, it's good. The pyramid, I want to talk about the one that they built. In the construction, is it a solid structure like we find in other pyramids? There might be chambers inside, but for the most part, a solid construction?
You know what? That is an excellent question, because what we assume with the Great Pyramid is when there aren't chambers that it's solid. But in actuality, and you can look on my website, there's a photo gallery, there are pyramids and crystals in the quote-unquote dead space, which actually becomes live space. But underneath this new pyramid, you've often heard about an inverted pyramid under the Great Pyramid. But what it is a slightly sloping toward the center platform, so that if there's any kind of earth changes, it makes the stones nudge closer together. But under that, in this new pyramid, is spirals radiating off a 12-foot crystal. And the spirals are 4 inches wide, and they are like arms of the universe, of galaxy, pardon. And so the Egyptians called the pyramid Per-Neter, which is the house of nature. And it's the nature, though, of the solar system, the cosmos, and the universe that's embedded within this. And so these arms, I saw the molds for them, are poured polymer crushed quartz. And there's a white one, and then a black one, and a white one, and a black one. And then the pyramid is built over the top of that. No one will ever be able to access what's down there, but it's part of the pyramid energy generating system, as well as these smaller pyramids inside the dead, I say dead space, it's live space, but the empty space, or what we think is just blocks. And so there are 3 chambers in the new pyramid, and there's all kinds of technology in those as well. And one of them is a 108 kilo, 22-inch in diameter crystal ball that floats on water. Now, one of the things the Pyramid Code, my documentary series, talks about is how water functions with the pyramids to generate energy. And it would have had to, the river necessarily went floating by in front of the pyramids, and now it's migrated 8 miles to the east. But there's all kinds of honeycomb chambers underneath the plateau where the Great Pyramid is that fills up with water. Well, this new pyramid also has that, with water aquifers underneath and water running inside the pyramid that actually suspends this huge crystal ball and makes it spin. And then there's a big bell in there. And so it's really working with the resonance field. So we don't know what was in the Great Pyramid before and how it's been stripped of treasures over the millennia, because it's been standing there for a good long time. And one of the things that they did, and Joseph Davidovich talks about this, was pouring stones. And I've been onto this for a long time because I noticed in the temples of Egypt that there were repeated frescoes that looked like they were molded and poured. And so Joseph Davidovich came up with this theory that polymers could be made and poured and made to resemble carved stone. And so he did a lot of experiments with natron and broken bits of sandstone and actually made stones and put them in molds and built a pyramid with this technique. And it makes perfect sense. And once you take the molds off, you can't tell that it wasn't carved, but you also don't have to move the stone because you pour it in place. So it's kind of like a sludge. And there's YouTube videos on this, and it's obviously quite convincing. But in the case of the Russian pyramids, when they were curing stones, they rang them with 9-foot tuning forks, and the polymer was made of crushed quartz crystal.
I have so many different little concepts all kind of going through my head, and I'm just going to kind of throw them out just to get them out of my head, but something about like Nikola Tesla and his free energy machine and how he had to dig it down into the ground in order to tap into the energy. But then it also makes me think of the sites in South America that Michael Tellinger's been working with, and the acoustic quality of the stones there. And you're talking about this acoustic quality of these stones. It sounds like there's so many pieces that are starting to come together, from all different aspects.
Well, and I'm going to comment here because Tesla built the Tesla Tower, and the construction was over a limestone aquifer with passageways that went down at the same angles as the passageways that go into the Great Pyramid underground. And so, yes, free energy. That's why I think that utilities are a complete ridiculous thing. We shouldn't have to pay for utilities. It should be free. And they drove Tesla into obscurity because he wanted to have free wireless radio and everything else years ago, free wireless power. And Michael Tellinger, it's South Africa, not South America.
Oh.
he had me down in May 2010 to shoot a trailer, and they had a helicopter, and they brought in a fuel truck, and we were able to fly over substantial areas where they've got these stone circles that do look like acoustic resonance. Now, at the time, he hadn't understood that and hadn't done the research, but he's been to Canada since, and I saw his most recent talk. And now these stone circles actually look like some kind of resonance frequencies. And so it's true and it's timely that all these pieces are coming together, and that we also have the internet and a system where we can archive and communicate with one another about these things. And now there's more and more knowledge, more and more people who are aware of other people's work, and I think that all the pieces are coming together here.
I think that's really cool. And one of the other pieces, you spoke a little bit about the worker who went in and had a miraculous healing happen. And I've had Sam, and I don't say his name right, Asminagash, the Bosnian pyramid guy, on the show several times. And one of the things he talks about is the high ion emissions underneath the pyramids in the chambers that have water flowing through them, kind of like what you're saying, and of people getting well while they are down digging in the tunnels and excavating those tunnels out. And I find it amazing that these parallels are showing up.
And there's a water table like that under Stonehenge, under the Abydos Temple. The constructions are similar to the Valley Temple. The water table is percolating back up at the foot of the Sphinx, which is right beside the Valley Temple. And it's not just spontaneous healings. It's connecting the senses in a way that's assisting people to become more psychic and more connected. And so I've got hard science, less than 1 chance in 1,000 that it happened by accident, that being inside the pyramid can contribute to a person becoming more psychic, though it doesn't happen instantly. It has to be integrated, and that's a process I'm going through measuring and trying to understand now through further study. But I know for myself that being exposed in these underground passageways inside the body of the Sphinx, in the subterranean chamber, also known as the pit, inside the Great Pyramid, that all kinds of things started to move inside me that literally contributed to me being more psychic.
Do they find the same underground passageways and waterways in the pyramids in the Americas? Are they constructed in the same basic principle?
No, not necessarily. John Burke did some studies with seeds and understood that the people, the Mayans, would come with seeds to the shamans, who would take the seeds to the top of the pyramid, and then they would have almost twice the yield. And then there were several pyramids, notably the newer ones, that were dead. And so doing the same rituals with the seeds didn't bring any further yield. And so many of the pyramids in the Americas are not considered live. And that's because the technology wasn't the same, but as I said, the ancient ones are more likely to be live. And I haven't done a lot of research on the pyramids physically and field work in the Americas, so I don't really know which ones are on aquifers and not, but it seems that they are the pyramid shapes. So there's pyramid shapes all over the world, but they're not all functional and they're not all on the ley lines. Now, many of the pyramids in the Americas are on the acupressure meridians of the globe, which is, are ley lines, dragon lines, they call them.
But one of the things, just from a visual point of view, the pyramids in Egypt, the one in Bosnia, the one that they built in Russia, all have an apex, and all had, I'm going to assume, some kind of a capstone. And the ones that we're familiar with in Mexico and South America, have that chamber on top, that little building on top, and don't really come to a point. And I'm wondering if there is a connection between how it's actually constructed, the sides of it, the flat sides of it, that make any kind of a difference.
Well, straight-sided pyramids function very differently than step pyramids. And the step pyramid in Egypt, that is so-called the oldest, which it cannot be, is actually a tomb. And the mastabas, they call them, are flat-topped and step-sided. and they have been known to be tombs. Later in the 18th dynasty, they started to bury people in the Valley of the Kings, and they made the underground subterranean chambers for them, and put grave goods in the text of the Egyptian Book of the Dead and that sort of thing. But there's never been a mummy found in a straight-sided pyramid, and they tend to be the energy machines. Now, the Great Pyramid doesn't have a capstone. Most certainly it had one in the very, very ancient days, but it's been a good long time since it's had one. And so the Great Pyramid actually doesn't function nearly as well as it used to, with the casing stones having been taken off, which changes the dimensions. The sides are jagged now with the stones themselves exposed instead of being smooth as the original pyramid did. But it's almost like if you took an electrical wire and you peeled the plastic layer off the outside and, you know, kind of cut up all the things that make the wire work, those inside wires aren't going to work the same way. So the conduit is not as functional. However, plus or minus 6 days from equinox and solstice, both spring, fall, winter, summer, all of those, the pyramid is particularly enlivened, if you will. And Valery Uvarov claims also January 19th. He doesn't know why, and I don't know either, which makes 49 days of the pyramid being, you know, more tuned and more resonant, if you will. But, I mean, it's gone through a tremendous amount of abuse over the millennia, for sure.
There are people that have proposed, and I mean, I love his work, like Christopher Dunn, but he's not the only one. I just know him the best, and I like his theory the best, that especially the Great Pyramid, was a machine. It was an energy generating machine. But it was more on a mechanical level as opposed to an energy vibrating level. What do you have to say to people that have come out with those kind of theories?
Well, I think Christopher Dunn really did his homework, and one of the things that is endearing about him is that he is an engineer. He's not trying to be an anthropologist, archaeologist, linguist, none of that. He is just saying, brass tacks, the physical structure of this adds up. And he's got chemical formulas, and he really has done a lot of work with it, and it makes sense to me. He's not talking about, and he doesn't claim to be trying to either, so we've got to take our hat off to him for that. Mm-hmm. But, the pyramids are multidimensional, multidisciplinary, multifunctional devices that have been used over, tens of thousands of years for various purposes. So I don't think we can nail it down and say it's only this or only that. But because it's representing our place in the solar system, galaxy, universe, and everything else, it's bound to be something that's far more tuned to natural energies than just one thing. And so I think it was also used as an ascension chamber, a place where the initiates could go and understand how to consciously depart from the physical body and to return. And so the Egyptians, had a full deck, and they understood cosmology and biology. Their top two concerns were what brings us here, why are we here, and where do we go when we leave, never thinking that, we're the coming forth in today. It's not the Book of the Dead. It was poorly translated. And they don't believe that the soul ever perishes. And so with that, when we are to make a transition and to leave our physical bodies, then what? And they practiced their entire incarnation to be able to do this smoothly and consciously. Now, in the Council of Nicene in 323 AD, Emperor Constantine outlawed the notion of reincarnation, and if anybody spoke of it, they'd be killed. And so we don't have the vocabulary or the conversation about these sorts of things, and religious studies tell us we live once, and they've distorted all these things that you can't wipe out of the Egyptian cosmology. And so there are many, many purposes, and the Egyptians were far more sophisticated and far more able than we are now. They lived in a refined golden age, and we're at the densest, darkest point of possibilities.
We're stupid.
I know. When we look with our eyes at them, we think we make up that they're stupid, and nothing could be further from the truth. So slowly we're piecing back together the grandeur of what they were able to accomplish, and I think there's still more to be put together.
There have been images floating around on the internet of this like ray beam coming out the top of the pyramid. Do you think that's a real picture?
Possibly not the real picture, but there's plenty of things. It really does focus energy, and standing columnar waves come out of the pyramid. And so, I mean, I used an animation to show that in the pyramid code. But it seems that over time we're able to see more plasma beings and energy fields that are emanating off of objects. And one of the things is that some cameras filter out the ability to see orbs. The natural state would be to see orbs and plasma beings and that sort of thing. And some cameras actually put a filter so you can't see them. And what I've noticed even on TV is that, there's lots of light beings and orbs and stuff, and they just can't get them all out anymore. They used to, reshoot and change the lighting and try to camouflage these sorts of things, or even take them out literally with Photoshop. But now they're just leaving them in because there's just too many of them. So I think as the energy starts to turn toward more refinement, that is going to be able to be photographed. There's also infrared cameras that will show those kinds of things. So I say absolutely that there is energy coming off the pyramid. Whether the particular photo that you saw was, fabricated and assisted or not, remains to be seen. But yes, there's definitely columns of energy coming off the tops of pyramids.
Could what you're finding and what other people are finding with the pyramids, could it just be, and I'm just being a little devil's advocate here, just kind of a freak of nature, an accident of construction?
No, absolutely not. There is so much in it. There are so many details, and it is just so powerful. And if you haven't been in the pyramid, you may not know how it feels to be in there. And I'll tell you, the construction and the pyramid energy complexes that Valerie Uvaroff has created are palpable. He created a crystal spa, and walking across the threshold of the door, to me, feels like being inside the Great Pyramid. So no, it's not a freak, it's not an accident, it is absolutely a marker that was meant to be still standing through earthquakes, floods, and everything else, so that one day maybe somebody would wake up and say, I wonder what they knew. And so as much as that's been repressed, and as much as the Egyptian guides have been taught to talk about the warring aspects of Ramses in the 22nd dynasty and hide it from us and say they're tombs and it's about death, not life, it didn't work, and it's no accident.
It always makes me laugh when they tell those stories, and I'm just going to throw in. So on Facebook, I posted a picture, I don't know if you saw it, of the original Sphinx, and it has Bitsy, the poodle with the tinfoil hat, as the original head of the Sphinx. It was kind of a alien thing. Anyway, and she has a Facebook page, just to let you know, Bitsy Bob on Facebook. Anyway, one of the things that was in your bio, which I don't think we ever really talked about when you were on the last time, was about, and actually, you know what? I'm going to hold that thought because I just looked at the clock and we need to take a quick commercial break. So, Carmen, why don't we come back and talk about the concept of levitation and advanced knowledge being used to construct the pyramid? Sound good?
Okay.
All right.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationship, Naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rita Louise, the founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics. Start a new career today on the leading edge of alternative health and healing. The Institute of Applied Energetics can help you to develop the specialized skills you'll need to work as an energy medicine practitioner, intuitive counselor, or professional medical intuitive. Besides our outstanding technical instruction, our programs also support you in creating and building a successful business in this rapidly growing field. Be a catalyst for changing the way healthcare is done around the world. Contact the Institute of Applied Energetics right away or visit appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may keep you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment with Meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. Before we get back to the show, I would like to thank all of you for tuning into Just Energy Radio. Many of the people I've helped over the years were listeners just like you. If you're at a junction in your life, don't stand alone at this important time. Call me or send me an email. We can set up a private consultation so that you too can experience health, healing, and wholeness in your life. To find out more about the services I offer, visit www.soulhealer.com.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. We're here talking to Carmen Boulter about the pyramids and the effects of the pyramids on us. Her website is pyramidcode.com, and she does have a 5-CD, hopefully I'm saying that right, 5-CD DVD set about the pyramids, which was fascinating, and I highly suggest that you get it because she's really smart and knows a lot of stuff and has had access, and we might get a chance to talk about this a little bit, has had access to places in Egypt that nobody ever gets to go. Anyway, so Carmen, before the break, I was saying that I don't think we really talked about, you know, what you believe was done to construct the pyramids, and I thought maybe you could talk about that for a second.
Well, it seems quite certain that anti-gravity was used, and in my past life memories I remember these lifters and nudgers that were these devices that the ancient initiates would use. I never saw slaves dragging stones with ropes and all of that, and even a Japanese team in 1978 had crews of 100 people trying to pull one stone, and they still couldn't do it, and they were trying to put them on rafts on the on the Nile and trying to drag them along, and they weren't able to do it. They ended up using cranes and steamboats and still couldn't do it, and the pyramid was only 60 feet high. And so it's not what they've told us. It cannot be what they've told us. It would be 2.3 million stones would mean setting and placing a stone a minute 24/7 for 20 years. So something much more clever and much quicker was happening. And so I have come to be very comfortable with the idea of quartz stones, of levitation, some carved stones, and so I think that anti-gravity devices were used. Even in Lee Scallion's work, he shows, there's a YouTube video that shows these discs that has little impressions and then a nodule, and they go around 360 degrees. And in this video, they put little magnets in there. Well, I have to admit, I hadn't noticed that there were little depressions in between each of these nodules on these discs that are at Abu Ghraib that are made out of quartz. And that, it just makes perfect sense that they could have been part of this anti-gravity thing. Now, even now, the Tibetans, they use sound resonance with these enormous horns, and many of them line up and blow into space, and they are levitating stone. And so I'm pretty certain that they were using those kinds of techniques, and that we haven't stumbled upon it again to be able to do that. So there, if you go into YouTube and type in anti-gravity, there's a number of different devices that are being shown, and so one of the reasons that it's hard for us to fathom this sort of knowledge is because it's been so thoroughly repressed, and anybody who's invented any of these kinds of devices has become endangered, and their labs have been shut down. So I'm pretty certain that the pyramids were built a long, long time ago in a space and time and world that we can't even begin to grasp, and they've stood the test of time, and the distance is so far that it's becoming inconceivable how they were built. But what's for certain is we don't have the technology to take them down, never mind put them back up.
I like that. Can't even take them down. Something that I've been kind of playing around with this idea, and I'm just going to throw it at you because of anybody that is an Egyptologist, I think you'd hear this the best, is the concept that, when you look at traditional cultures, there really is this thing about chanting and singing and kind of being with nature and in tune with nature. And I just wonder how much the use of the voice and the use of intention was used in making some of these things happen, as opposed to something physical and tangible like a machine, even if it's an anti-gravity machine.
No, but it wouldn't be a machine. No, you've got it right on. Like, when I'm just talking these little devices like a rod forest thing that you'd hold in your hand. But my past life memories, we didn't even talk. We didn't need to talk. We were all telepathic. And so just the way birds chirp back and forth and you can hear a work, and there's danger or just, sweetness, and the tone of the singing between them is indicating the mood. And then any details would have been sent through telepathic pictures. Like, sometimes we give each other movies, we send each other pictures. And oftentimes, like a case in point, as we become more psychic, like somebody can say, I went to, and you don't even know what they're going to say, and you see them standing in front of a restaurant and the name, and you give them this thing, and they just keep going in their conversation. They don't realize, because they were looking for the word and you gave it to them, how did that happen? But
you were psychic momenting in them.
But they're visualizing the thing. They're visualizing the restaurant. They're visualizing the name. They just can't read it. And so that's what we used to do, is we would send each other pictures. We would give each other movies. And we would chirp our way through it.
I like the chirp part. So there was a question in the chat room that came from Jim Barnard, who's our chat room monitor. And the question is, so if the Great Pyramid is not a tomb, then what's the sarcophagus box doing in there? He's been to Egypt and he's seen it, and or is it a tomb as well as all these other functions, which was a follow-up?
It was never, ever a tomb. No. But the thing is that if someone died and then they had to be buried in this place, you would conceivably have to be able to carry that sarcophagus up through the chambers and up through the passageways, and there's no way that you could get that box through the passageways. So in other words, it had to be placed there before, and the pyramid was built around it. And I've always said the so-called sarcophagus, because actually, if you were to strike the sides of that granite box, coffer, if you will, it rings. And it is possible to contain a physical body in there, but without the lid. And one of the things that we did in the Great Pyramid study is each participant who had never been in the pyramid before was tested before going in, measuring their consciousness fields and the alignment of their chakras, the energetic values of their chakras, which we now have equipment we can measure. They got inside the sarcophagus for 2 minutes, got out, we measured them again, and then we measured them in a delayed process a day later to see what was happening. And so many people who go in there want to lie down, not because they want to pretend they're dead, because they want to understand what it means to experience that, what the pyramid energy is, and there's all kinds of energy flying around in there, that it's a focal point. It becomes a focal point to do energy work within the pyramid. So just because there's a box there doesn't, like I'm looking at my ottoman now in my living room, that doesn't necessarily mean you got to put dead things in it.
Was there a lid on it, near it?
No, not that I've ever heard of or seen. And again, if it fit that sarcophagus, you wouldn't be able to get it out unless you blew it up and took it out in pieces.
Well, and actually, Frank Joseph had written a book on the Ark of the Covenant, and one of his theories was that Moses, when they left Egypt, took the Ark with them, and it wasn't really constructed in the Sinai, but that the Ark actually sat in that box, which I thought was kind of an interesting thought, and it was actually the power structure of making the pyramid do pyramid things.
I'm going to take that one step further. I don't think that's the case for the so-called King's Chamber, but I do think that it was housed inside the so-called Queen's Chamber. And there's a corbelled niche, so with step sides that go up and like a little spot, it would have fit in there. And I've always thought that that's where it got charged, and that when they left with it, it had a charge, and as they continued to go, the charge weakened, diminished. They had no way to charge it up again, and so it lost its physical power, but it didn't lose its psychological, mythological power. And so I think it was charged inside the Queen's Chamber.
Well, that's a really kind of an interesting twist on it, that it didn't supply the energy to the pyramid, but the pyramid supplied it with energy.
Makes more sense to me. It's like a docking station for our iPhone.
Let's bring it real 21st century. When you've gone in, let's kind of talk about your experience. I mean, I know that you've been to the pyramids a million times and inside, I don't know how many times, but I'll assume more than once. And what has been your experience in going into it? I mean, because you're sensitive to energy, to the effects of the pyramid on you.
Well, I got a big file on this because the first time I was in there was in 1977, that's a long time ago. And all the rules were different. There was no big wall around the plateau, and the tours were 10 minutes every hour. And I went with this young Egyptian fellow who said, well, when the tour leaves, just stay back and we'll stay in. And when the new tour comes, we'll hear them coming and we'll just stand back and join them and go ooh-ah. And so the first time I ended up spending 3.5 hours inside the pyramid, and I had an amazing, amazing, amazing experience. And I took photographs that time, and there were all these pink and green apparitions in there, and I even took my camera in to see if it was broken, and they said, nope, nothing wrong with the camera. So it really struck me. It just ignited me somehow. Like I'd been curious about the pyramid and the Sphinx, and I had been, waiting for a long time because I got ignited as a child with the idea of going there. And so it got me reading and sensing, and it was a long time before I went back. The second time I went to Egypt was 94, and I've been going steadily since then. It's now, this next trip is my 28th time. But I would live there for, several months at a time and then leave and come back. And so I spent a lot of time in the underground passageways, inside the body of the Sphinx, and inside the Great Pyramid. I spent at least 3 hours in the pit in the dark by myself, and believe me, in the pitch black, it's not dark in there. And so...
stop. It's not dark in there?
Well, there's all kinds of light flashing around. So...
Okay.
My eyes adjusted to the pitch black, and we're talking pitch black in terms of no light source whatsoever anywhere close. And then it starts to be a light show in there, like all kinds of things. And that's what we see, like when people take pictures inside the pyramid, orbs and shapes. And now I'm suggesting that we film them rather than take stills because they're moving. And so the energy fields there are palpable, and it's incredible. So And as I said, like when I went inside the body of the Sphinx, I would never sleep for 72 hours, not a wink, and I did it over and over and over again. And so I was, downloading light codes, literally watching all these light codes come down, and they would just come down in rows and pages and then start over. But it was almost like downloading a computer program into your computer. Like if you don't unpack it, if you don't execute the file, you've just got a file sitting there. And so some mechanism has to happen to unpack the file and install the program, but then some mechanism has to happen to use the program and produce something. And so I really think of it as a several-step process that takes a good long time to integrate. So the long and short of it is, and this is what I'm trying to measure with other people now, is I'm convinced that my experiences doing that and being inside those fields over and over and over again have made me more psychic. And anybody who knows me will tell you that I know more than I should know about a lot of things.
But how does the Sphinx fit into this whole thing? I mean, it's not a pyramid. I mean, it's by the pyramid, and in other pyramid sites, and this is just might be my ignorance, there isn't a corresponding like structure, at least not that I'm aware of. So what significance does the Sphinx have into the whole play of the pyramids?
Well, first of all, the Giza Plateau is the center of the largest landmass on the planet. And so it's Grand Central Zero, let's start here zone. And it used to be, instead of Greenwich Mean Time, it was Giza that was the 0 point of the time zones on the planet. And so it is very much a grand marker. And there's much more going on there than just the Great Pyramid. It's a unified ground plan with the 3 pyramids and the 2 causeways, each at 14 degrees, and the Sphinx itself, which is a Leo symbol, and also the fixed astrological zones. So it's almost like an instrument in itself that demarcates where we are in the cosmic cycle. And each of the pyramids on the plateau and north and south, there's a series of 22 pyramids on the Band of Peace. They all correspond to star systems. I've identified them all, and these, except for Saqqara, and I'm, determined to find what that other one is. But I've been doing it in Starry Night Pro and looking at how you can run like a movie, like you set the star systems and set the extragalactic grid, and you can run it back for like 30,000, 40,000 years BC, and it holds together, and if you move forward, it holds together like way into the future. But if you take the wrong star system, it'll last like 100 years or maybe 1,000 years, but then it blows out, and it's not part of that unified system. And if you keep going, so it's Sirius behind us, which could very much be a binary star with our sun in a binary system, and then Orion, and then the Pleiades, and then the Pleiades associate with Abusir, and then skip one because I don't know what Saqqara is yet, and Dashur is Cygnus. If you keep going in a straight line along the extragalactic meridian, the nose of the bird of Cygnus, straight up the tail, spinal column, goes straight into the galactic center, and then loops back around to Sirius. Well, that is the most impressive thing that, I had my jaw hanging down for 2 weeks discovered that. And so the Sphinx is very much an astrological marker through the zodiac signs. And even the Orion will reach a zenith and then rock back. We need models, which is why the pyramid code has 174 animations in the 5 hours to be able to show this. And, if you're curious, you can see it. Not everything I'm saying, but you can see much of this to explain how it all works. And so I've got more work in progress as I learn more about it. But the Sphinx itself, I was blown away every time I was in there. And now it's changed. I've got photographs from what it looks like now. And they've gone in there and they put wooden structures in and carved it out, and, put lights in and stuff, and then sealed it. Like, they don't want anybody in there for sure. But when I first went in there, it was like wormhole passages. And I also know that there's an ancient Temple of Isis to the right, like along the side of the Sphinx, and then they cemented over the top. You can never get in there. And they cemented all the passageways on the inside. I spent 5 years in and out of those passageways. And to me, it was like wormhole connections to another universe, honestly. It's the easiest way I can put it. Like, this blew my mind so many times, I didn't know what to make of it. But slowly over time, I've understood it more. And the fact that we are popping between dimensions, and the fact that that was what the Egyptians' agenda was to understand that, to do it consciously, and so we wouldn't go unconscious when we move between dimensional spheres and physical and non-physical states of being. But
Carmen, they told me in the chat room that it's hard to hear you, so I don't know if you can talk to your microphone a little better, your handset a little better.
How's this?
Oh, way better. Way better.
Okay.
I mean, do you think that the Egyptians were jumping between dimensions?
Oh, definitely. Now, there's always going to be the farmer in the field who's, milking the cow and tending the grain. But there was a group of high-level initiates that were trained at the temples, and then they arrived at the Giza Plateau, and they did these high-level initiations, and that was the task, was how to navigate these dimensional spheres. I mean, look how crippled we are. I mean, it blows people's minds just to hear the words, and it's like they were really well-versed in it. And there's plenty of evidence of it through, the various texts that they've left us. But especially the idea of the law of Ma'at, that everything had to be in balance with truth. And our society's wiped that out completely. If you don't get caught, it's not wrong. And we have to be dense in order for certain people to get away with robbing us blind as well, and distracted through television and whatever. So they were very, very serious about nature, about health, about spirituality, and I'm not saying religion, I'm saying spirituality, and about reaching high states of consciousness. They had the highest value in their society was consciousness.
And it seems like that was of high value to cultures around the world, traditional, primitive, because I don't want to say ancient, because some of those traditions still are alive in cultures today.
Yeah, if somebody didn't wipe them out and kill everybody and give them Bibles and, stop them from doing their natural things. But we're talking about the difference between a golden age and the dark of the dark. And we are at the bottom of the densest possible cycle. And it is a bloodbath, blood from death, not blood from life. And there's certain people who have sensibilities that resonate and come from, these past life cellular memories. And this world is a crazy place. And other people go along and think, yeah, that's just the way it is. There's always been war. And no, there hasn't. Sorry to say. Happy to say.
But we really have to go far back in time to a period where there really wasn't. I mean, there were periods where there weren't, but...
Well, people say that there's always been war. Well, that's history's when the soldiers came, when the patriarchy started, and it coincides with 3113 BC when the Mayan calendar started. And the patriarchy's agenda has been to erase evidence of everything other than itself, to lop off the sacred feminine and female anything, and, thump the chests of the masculine and see if they can get along without women. And look at the mess we're in now.
Eating TV dinners.
Yeah, with all those fancy ingredients.
Well, do you think because we're at the bottom, the negative apex of this cycle, that with the whole, do you believe in the whole 2012 thing?
Well, again, I always say you don't have to believe it. Either there's something to it or there isn't. And again, with these galactic cycles and working extensively in Starry Night Pro, which is a computer program that's got the entirety of the night sky and going out for quite a distance that you can manipulate in terms of choosing where you want to look from the vantage point and then the time frame and choose the star systems. And so I was looking at, what is 2012? What's the significance? And if there's a galactic alignment with the sun in the center of the galaxy, then what happened in its solstice, winter solstice, then what happens the year before, or the year after? How does it work, and why is that alignment so specific? And so every solstice we've been spinning close to it. If you imagine holding a pen up to the edge of a cup, 2008 would have been the edge of the cup, and then you inch your way along, 9, 10, 11, 12 is right smack in the middle. So we've been visiting this energy and then spinning away from it, which is why I think that there's been mass awakenings and, more people, even 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been having this conversation as relaxed this way. The questions wouldn't be as clear, and We just wouldn't be having it, you know it, right? And so the alignment is something that happens only every 26,000 years, but also it's like all the cycles come to 0 point. So the astrological age is changing, and the Mayan calendar is coming to a point, and everything is coming to a 0 point. And if you imagine all these cycles spinning in different directions, and they come to zero and they're flat, it makes almost like a ladder into a new universe. And that's the point, and that's the opportunity. And so it's highly significant. Now, from 1 minute to the next, I don't know if we're going to feel anything like the moment that solstice hits or the moment of the full moon, and, bells don't go off, and yet there's something to the cycles. And so, we feel those influences if we choose to tune in, if we choose to feel. But because thought is creative, and what we talk about, we think about, and what we think about, we bring about, if we're thinking, seeing everything you see on TV is true and there's nothing to it, or it's Armageddon and the whole world's going to blow up, it's hard for us to perceive the more subtle energies if we're not looking in the right place.
I saw a picture of the pyramids, and there was the stars of Orion's belt kind of sitting over the top, and the little text that went with it was that on, and I'm going to say December 6th, 2012, that the stars from the belt of Orion were actually going to be rising over the tops of the pyramid. And, if you're working with this, astronomy program, is there truth to that?
Nope. Well, if it was, what do we think? I even found the picture that didn't have the stars on it. I mean, people just go in there. Okay, one of the things that I've been really aware of is misinformation in alternative media. And all the ways people say they're doing research when they're just reading other people's stuff and regurgitating. Research is science. Research is hardcore study with a hypothesis and that sort of thing. Everything else is a literature review, right? But people say, in my research. No, they're saying, in the stories I'm telling about what other people wrote. Okay, just to clarify. Little pet peeve. And so then they're taking pictures off internet and adding things to it in Photoshop. Now, it could be that there's some kind of zenith alignment, but you wouldn't perceive it that way. Why would you be, like that angle that picture's taken, would be standing to the east, and the stars aren't overhead that way just on top of they're not going to sit on top of the pyramids like that. The picture makes no sense. It's fake, okay? Now,
well, yeah, I kind of figured that because, I had to think about it a minute and went, if the stars were out, it would be dark.
And they'd be high. You wouldn't look at the pyramids to see the stars. You'd have to look up. Now, they may be on top, but to what angle and what zenith point? And what is the significance of December 3rd or 6th or whatever? Nothing. There's nothing happening on that day that's in alignment. So people get this thing, and then they start to feel like they can, participate in the discovery of what they made up. Sorry.
But I just was like, well, wouldn't that be cool? It got my, well, wouldn't that be cool factor going as opposed to it was true.
Okay, but if you look at the Pyramid Code, there is some cool stuff where you'll see how the arc, how Orion lays on the horizon, and how it coordinates with the heliacal rising of Sirius. So when the sky is dark, 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 and the sun starts to come up, the stars start to fade, and the last one that's on the horizon is a heliacal rising, is what you call it, and how that coordinates and how the patterns go back and forth. It reaches the high point, it rocks back down to the horizon. So you do have a tracking of the stars of Orion that somehow connect to the pyramids, but you need to look at it like from outer space down, if you will, or from a different perspective in order to see it. So it is cool, and there are alignments, but you wouldn't take a picture like that.
What I think is interesting, and we need to go to break here again in a second, is that when you survey indigenous cultures and ancient cultures, they really only ever point to a finite, very finite group of stars or star systems as to their origin or some connection to them. Mm-hmm. As opposed to, well, I like this star over here and we like this star over here. I mean, we just find, Orion's belt, the Pleiades, Sirius, it's just, 4 or 5 different star systems.
That's right. Cygnus, Canopus, there aren't that many. And on the next trip to Magic Egypt, we've got Dr. Aaron Nell, who's an archaeoastronomer, who's just finishing her PhD, and she studied with Clive Ruggles, who's world-famous archaeoastronomer. But even so, like, departments don't usually like to mix astronomy with archaeology and all that, because one of the methods of the patriarchy is to divide, and not let people talk to each other, so we can't put the pieces together. But archaeoastronomy is, now it's a discipline, and it's looking at the correlations of the star systems around the world, and she studied in particular the comparison between Greek stars and Egyptian, and how the legends were the same.
Carmen, there's the music, which means we need to go to break, and we'll be back with Carmen Boulter, the producer of the Pyramid Codes website, pyramidcodes.com, after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.